Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope you guys are doing good. Thanks for hopping on to our weekly Hospice 101 lives. If this is the first time you're hopping on, what we've been doing over the last month or so is really guiding families through what hospice is, because the word hospice is very scary. We are a home health and hospice and personal care company, been around for about 23 years. And what we've seen in those years is that there's just not a lot of easy, palpable, digestible, if that is a word, information that can allow families to at least understand what specifically they need to know when it comes to healthcare at home. But more importantly, that we are talking about is hospice care. So, what we do is we'll guide you through a scenario, a real story retold. So, it's a story of a patient that we've served. We flip their gender, we flip their story so that for HIPAA purposes, but at least you can step into their shoes and see if this is something that relates to you or one of your loved ones. And we walk you through that journey and then do a hospice 101 at the end so that you can understand what it is and how it can be a benefit to someone that you may know or yourself. So let's hop right into it. So some stats. Everyone loves stats, but the biggest thing to know when it comes to hospice is that there's about 2 million people annually that are on hospice at a time. The reality, though, is that there's a 6 month benefit period that is utilized, and it can go longer than that if they continue to qualify. But on average, only 18 to 20 days are used on hospice care. And so, what we've seen a lot is that families will say, "Man, I wish I would have started hospice sooner because I didn't realize there was just so much help." And what we're doing now with this series is to really help families know, okay, this is the information that you can get so that you're not using hospice at the very, very last second. Instead, you can utilize the full benefit, which is rightly um, your loved one's benefit. And that's what they actually get because of Medicare. So we're going to talk about a story, and this is specifically Jesslyn Wynn, and we're going to talk about her and walk through her story, her life, and how she's on hospice now and how things are going with her. And so Jesslyn is a back in the day, she was a great photographer. She loved to like take pictures. Her whole house is like full of photos everywhere. And back, you guys, I mean, early, I guess, 90s or even 80s, 70s, Polaroid pictures were the biggest things. And she would put Polaroids all over her room, and she just loved photography. And so Miss Jesslyn, later in her life, as she got into her 70s, she had a daughter, of course, and she would help, with the new baby, grandbaby, Jesslyn's daughter. And that was her joy, right? She had a cat named Luna, and just loved going through pictures and now taking pictures of her new grandbaby and showing her photos, and that's just the life that she loved to hand over to her, not just her child, but her now grandbaby as well. But as she progressed in life, she was diagnosed with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which it's a long word, but it's just inflammation in the lungs that basically stops you from breathing well and efficiently. So she would manage that with inhalers or oxygen and just kind of pacing herself throughout the day. But most of the time, it was good for her because she was able to maintain that her quality of life and do home health and do certain things, which wasn't an issue at all. But recently, a few things started to change. Is that she got more winded recently, and it was just hard for her to control the techniques that she was doing, and it was really taking a toll on her, and her quality of life it's not the same. And her daughter also began to notice that mom's really fatigued now and really having trouble breathing, even with on oxygen at times. And those symptoms became a little bit overwhelming for her daughter Sharon. And what do we need to do, or what's the next steps? And so what happened is this kind of ended. She recently got hospitalized, and so when she got hospitalized, the COPD progressed, and the doctor was like, maybe with everything that's going on because of clinically how she's doing with the diagnosis, it's getting worse. There's not that much to do. The doctor was considering maybe thinking about hospice care, and that was like PTSD for Sharon, the daughter. Is She was saying like, whoa, 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 whoa. Dad was on hospice, and he was here on hospice one day and passed away the next day. I don't. Is mom like gonna die tomorrow? And that's kind of like the where she was left. Unfortunately, she was at the hospital and then heard this, and then really didn't kind of know how to process all that. And you know, what does that even mean? What does hospice mean? Is my daughter now, which is Jesslyn's granddaughter, is like not gonna have my mom around, and so just kind of that tension. And we see that a lot with families, is that okay, what do we do now? And so if you're joining on for this right now, what we've been doing is kind of walking through over the last couple months, doing a hospice 101 and educating families on what is hospice. And so we just walk through a scenario. So it's a real story retold. And we're talking about Jesslyn, who's loves photography and got diagnosed in her early 70s with COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Fancy word for it's very hard for her to breathe because of the inflammation in her lungs, and her quality of life has decreased tremendously. And the doctor was like, hospice. And now Sharon, Jesslyn's daughter, is like, whoa, hospice, like, is she gonna die tomorrow? And so that's where we pick up. And so now Sharon is okay, what is hospice? She starts doing some research. She goes through and Google, looks at Instagram, looks at YouTube, looks everywhere, and is like, what is hospice? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what is it? And so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about hospice and what it is. And she Googles and she finds our agency, and she's like, okay, well, I want to talk to someone about hospice. I don't know anything about hospice, but can someone at least help me understand it and educate me so that I know what it is? And so when we do these hospice 101s, and when any hospice does a hospice 101, what the best hospices do is they break down the levels of care and what is hospice and the benefit for someone who's going into hospice. And so what hospice focuses on is managing pain and symptoms, emotional and spiritual support, supporting the family, and also, most importantly, honoring the wishes of your loved one. Now, hospice can take place anywhere. It could take place at home, and most oftenly, depending on the goals of the family, it is at home. It could be at an assisted living facility or a senior living facility. It can also be at a group home, which is like a residential care home, which is like a home with like 4 or 5 individuals in the home with a caregiver there. It could be done at a skilled nursing facility as well. And so those are the areas where hospice can be done. It doesn't just have to be in one place or facility or at home. It could be in several places, depending on the family's wishes. And then also, when is hospice appropriate? And now this is where a doctor writes an order, or a lot of times the clinical guidance has to be reviewed to see whether or not someone qualifies. So with Jesslyn's case, specifically with her COPD, it's progressed so much and her quality of life is getting worse and worse that she clinically would qualify potentially for hospice care. And then that's where kind of everything starts. And so when you're looking to understand more about hospice, these are the things that we like to kind of break down for families. Is you think about it 3 parts. There's so many layers to hospice. There's a lot of layers. But if you're just wanting to understand the simplicity of it, think of it as 3 areas: the care team, supplies, DME, and then medications, right? And so these are kind of like the core aspects that of hospice that families need to know and to understand. So let's talk about the care team. So it's a group of clinicians that are assigned to your loved one. The first person is the first person that you will see is the nurse or the quarterback, the one who does the admission. And so that nurse basically is your main person that coordinates care. Now, hospice is not 24/7 at the bedside, right? It is 24/7 availability. So that nurse will come in depending on, in this case, let's say Jesslyn goes home today and she's stable but not stable, right? She's getting worse and she's weakening. The nurse may go out, do an admission, and based on Jesslyn's criteria, she may go out and say, okay, I'm going to come out about two times a week and check up on you and see how things are going. Here's a plan. And so that nurse creates a plan of care with that team. So you have the nurse and you have the aide. Now the aide comes out a couple times a week, depending on the need. Let's say Jesslyn is, oh, I want a bath maybe 2 to 3 times a week. Then the aide can come out and help with that bath. Now it's not to come out and do vacuuming and cleaning and dishes and taking pictures, right? The aid is specific to the aid care plan that's done by the nurse who did the admission. And that's the guidance of that from a nursing standpoint, because this is all covered by Medicare. And we'll get into the insurance side in a little bit. Then you also have a chaplain, a social worker. The chaplain and the social worker are there for that emotional, spiritual support, to coordinate also. If you're not sure about funeral arrangements down the road or a will in place, DNR, the social worker is there to help kind of relieve that burden, to help you and guide you through that. And then now when you come on the hospice, there's a medical director or doctor who oversees the hospice. And now this is a big point to emphasize, is that now Jesslyn was seeing so many doctors, maybe the pulmonologist, the PCP, cardiologist. Now, when you come on hospice, now you have one doctor, and that doctor oversees the care because it's tying to the terminal illness, which in her case is COPD. And having that expert in that team to help navigate you through these stages is the same way, like when you think of it as having a baby and having a doctor who's specializing in that. That's the same approach when you're looking at hospice. That's what hospice is made for and what it was built. So that's the quick summary, but that's the care team. The second part is when you're looking at medications. So now when that nurse, the quarterback that we talked about, comes out and is doing that admission, the nurse will review all of Jesslyn's medications. And based on the terminal diagnosis, which is COPD, and all the other diagnoses that she may have, hospice will cover certain meds, which means the hospice will take control of those meds and review them and coordinate. And so they'll be covered and non-covered meds. But the beautiful thing about hospice is that a lot of times what the best hospices do is that they reconcile all those meds. And then instead of Sharon going back and forth to Tom Thumb and Sam's and getting those meds, a lot of times what the hospices will do is that they'll drop ship all those meds to the house, to the home. And then when the nurse comes out, reconcile them and make sure everything is coordinated effectively. And it's a huge relief for families. It's a huge relief for Sharon in this case, to know that, okay, the medications are managed in terms of what is coming in, when it's coming out, when it's ordered. And then especially with pain and keeping Miss Jesslyn comfortable, the nurse will be in charge of guiding Sharon and the family through a good plan to make sure that all those things are in order, which is super helpful for families. Next part is DME and supplies. So hospice, what they do is they contract with a pharmacy. We talked about meds. They also contract with the durable medical equipment company. And that DME company is the one that supplies like a walker, wheelchair, hospital bed, oxygen. In her case, now she can have a huger oxygen concentrator, and that could be brought to the home, which is super helpful, or a portable tank to help her get around for Miss Jesslyn. Gloves are available, chucks, depends, incontinence supplies, all those things are available. Now, in Jocelyn's case, she may not need it right away, but just knowing that you have the ability and the availability to get those supplies when you do need it is big help for families as well. And so those are kind of like the three areas that we talked about. So now the thing is, now that Sharon has kind of got all this information and she's like, okay, I feel better now. I feel like, okay, I understand that, okay, mom may not die right tomorrow or today, but this is a benefit. Okay, where do I start? And so that's where, in that situation, let's talk about her situation, is that she recognized the time. Now the doctor in the hospital will write an order, right? And then you get to choose the hospice provider, and you get to pick the one that you feel comfortable with based off of what is tailored and needed for your loved one. So in this situation, Jesslyn and Sharon will work and figure out a good hospice for them. and then the admission process begins, which is what we talked about. The nurse goes out, does the admission, does the assessment, creates a care plan, and really navigates Jesslyn and Sharon through that process. And so, want to go back to one thing is the qualifications, right? So, not everyone qualifies for hospice. What Medicare has created in this benefit for families is based off of specific diseases. And so, there's determinants of each diagnosis that allows for someone to qualify. So, if you see these little emojis, this is a summary to kind of get a good understanding. You have the heart, you have the lungs, you have the brain, which can represent Alzheimer's, right? Or neurology types of diagnoses, dementia. You've got the ribbon for cancer. This old man with the little cane is like debility and weakness is kind of like a coordination of so many different things, not eating, weight loss, not able to do ADLs. And then you have specific blood diseases, right? So you have all these diseases that each of them have a specific criteria that has to be met. And so in Jesslyn's case, you've got the lungs and she's COPD. So under that, there's paperwork that has to be reviewed, right, by the hospice to see whether or not that your loved one actually qualifies based on these measures, right? And then also reviewing and seeing your loved one at the bedside and seeing, oh, okay, do they qualify, right? So all these things have to be done before someone can actually get on hospice. Another big part is the payer, who is paying for all these things, right? And a lot of families are like, oh man, this is a lot. I can't afford all of these things. The beautiful thing about it is under Medicare, Part A covers this 100%. So all the things that we talked about, all the services that we talked about before, all those things are covered by Medicare 100%. Now, if you have a loved one who's younger than 65 and doesn't have Medicare, their insurance carrier may have a hospice benefit. So we always like to recommend to families, reach out to your insurance carrier and see if they can give you a reference of specific agencies that are in network with the specific insurance so that they can take care of your loved one. Because in that situation, those hospices have to be contracted with that insurance in order to take care of your loved one. And so that's a big relief for families, is knowing that, okay, wow, at least I know that I can get all these benefits of help. And now when you think about it, Jesslyn has been paying into Medicare and Social Security for almost her whole life, right? So all these things are rightfully hers and should be utilized at this time in her life. So now Jesslyn is on hospice, and she's been on hospice for 8 months. We talked about 6 months, right, or less to live as a terminal diagnosis. After that is a recertification to see if she continues to qualify. And she's at month 8 and she's still declining, but she's still there and able to live her life with quality and dignity. She's getting nursing visits regularly. Her cat Luna is there and she's able to enjoy her cat and her granddaughter in her last days. But her COPD hasn't gone away. That's the thing. But hospice is there to help support her through this time. And Sharon, her daughter, is now not burdened so much with the weight of all of those things, and knowing that she has a clinical team that's there to help guide her through it. So it's a big help. And so that's hospice in a nutshell. When you're thinking about healthcare at home, we talked about hospice, which is like the top part. Then you have palliative care, which is there for families who want to continue to seek aggressive treatment. So now let's say Jesslyn is wanting to continue to do aggressive medications and aggressive treatment. She wouldn't be on hospice in that case. She would want to do palliative care. And then you have personal care. So this is where the sides of the care that she's getting, let's say she's on hospice now and the aid's only going out a couple times a week to help with bathing. But let's say Sharon needs some more help because to help her mom in between a couple hours. So they may pay out of pocket for someone to be there 4 to 6 hours to 2 days a week, right? That's not covered under Medicare, but that is covered under personal care services, which is a great benefit as well. And companies, any company that in the area, you can search and find those who can provide those services. And you have home health, which is a totally different type of part of Medicare, which is covered under Part B. And so now this is for improvement. So Jesslyn was actually on home health a while back, and she was getting physical therapy, she was getting nursing, and she was able to maintain and keep her quality of life for like 10 years, right? But as her disease continued to progress, home health, she wasn't able to meet those goals and to continue to improve. And that's where the doctor was recommending hospice care. And so, in a nutshell, that is care at home. And but specifically, when we talk about hospice care and hospice 101, this is what hospice is. And so I hope this helped you guys. I think we have a couple questions. We usually do, but I think JT will be hopping on here in a second. Let me see if I can pull him in here.
Hey, what's up, Charles?
Hey, what's up, JT? How's
You
it
hear me
going?
there? I'm
Yeah,
doing pretty
perfect.
good. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Oh yeah, St. Patrick's Day already. It's like the year's like flown by so fast.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So we had a question from LinkedIn from Mr. Webb. Um, he said, "How do you talked a lot about the support families get at home after they start hospice?" But he asked, "How do you find families typically react when you first introduce the idea of hospice before they experience any of those services or support that they get?"
Yeah, it's hard. I think what we've seen, and probably the best hospice has seen, is that even before you say the word hospice, you have to like make them feel comfortable with you, right? So it's getting to know them, right? And so a lot of times what we do and what I'll do is I'll just like if I'm in the hospital with them and maybe the doctor ordered hospice and they're like, oh, they don't know, I'll just come in and just talk with them, get to know Jesslyn, get to know that she loves photography, and get to know that her daughter, she's got a granddaughter, and she's got a cat named Luna. And that's with anything in life, is that people have to know that you care before you start clinically going into a service. And so a lot of times it's helping them feel comfortable first, and then addressing that it makes it a little bit easier when they feel that they can trust you. And sometimes we'll just talk for like 10-15 minutes, and then they'll be like, all right, tell me about hospice, what do I need to know, and it's just hard, but at least they feel comfortable knowing that, hey, I'm here for your best interest, and the best hospices do that. So great.
Sweet. And once that happens, you actually posted, if you're watching this on March 17th or maybe a replay, Charles just posted on LinkedIn how death is a lot like birth.
Hmm.
Um, we hear that in our world, but for someone that's new to hospice care, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great, yeah. So and we've seen this because a lot of our nurses, like, they say the same thing. It's like when you think about birth, right? It's you're expecting to have a baby, right? And you have all this support. You have doctors who come in, you have breastfeeding classes, you have a tour of the hospital before you go, right? And then you have a baby shower, right? You have all these people and loved ones around you to help you through this. And then as it gets really, really close, you're literally have a whole bunch of doctors and nurses around you to help guide you through it. And so it's the same when it comes to end of life. If there's a terminal diagnosis and doctors are saying, there's not that much to do, not much we can do to help cure this, then they say you may consider hospice. Now, hospice doesn't mean they're going to pass away right away, but it is the same thing. You now have the care team that we talked about, nurses, doctors, right? You have supplies, right? You have all these things that kind of guide your loved one through that end stage. And what we like to say is, like, hospice doesn't mean you're going to pass away now. And also it doesn't take away the pain of death. But it does allow, like we talk about JT all the time, is like you're going in an airplane and there's turbulence. The pilot tells you that there's turbulence and what to expect. It doesn't take away the scariness of turbulence, but at least you know that there's someone there to help you navigate through that process and navigate through that tough time. That's what hospice is, and that's what having a child is like, because you can't have a baby by yourself. You have to have, even if you don't go to hospital, you have to have a midwife. You have to have someone, a doula, or someone to help with the birth, and that is the expert that comes in, and that's what hospice is.
Sweet, thank you. And you mentioned doula. We actually, our social worker here at
Yeah,
Charlotte, one of them's a end of life doula, so we'll have her on in a
yeah,
future
that'd be good.
and kind of talk
Miss
about
Terry.
things, Miss Terry. But we had a question from YouTube, English. Thanks for hopping on.
Hmm.
They said, uh, how about success as a provider? They've
Hmm.
been and seen some videos and our success and longevity in the industry in a dense market, DFW.
Hmm.
Can you talk about how you and your team have achieved that growth?
Success. Yeah, I think it's all about our mantra is one patient, one family, one home at a time. And the reality of it is that you're not going to get everything right because we're all human, right? But I think kind of goes back to what we talked about is if you truly care about someone, right? You truly care about the patient that's in front of you, and you're honest with them and you do the best you can. I think that's what any family wants. How would I want my family, my loved one, my mom to be treated? Would I want a nurse to go out and be proper at the bedside and have good care and have good tenderness and explain things that I don't know? Would I want to call the office and know that someone who's picking up the phone is friendly and genuine and can help guide me through a question and not feel like I'm burdening them? Would if there's an issue with the DME company and there is an issue and there will be something, maybe something fails, can I call the office and at least know that someone's going to help me figure it out, right? And so I think as a provider, you have to just know that you have to just be there and know that you're going to mess up. And when you do mess up, just take it and learn from it and go on. But I think it's all about care. In an industry that's saturated, there's a lot of private equity and a lot of big corporations. But if you just do it the right way and take care of people, in the end, we're 23 years. We've had some failures, we've had some good things and some bad things, but it's all about just taking care of people. So, great question.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, that's all the questions we got asked. If anyone's watching this after the fact, feel free to follow us on social media, TikTok, YouTube. Charles is on LinkedIn as well as myself, so feel free to send us a message or comment on posts. But I think that about does it today.
Awesome. Hey, we'll see you guys next time. See you.